So today I want to talk about the 3 different most common types of parking brakes and how to use them, how to tell if your parking brake is failing, and what to do in an emergency situation if you need to use your parking brake as a brake to come to a stop, because it isn't quite as obvious as it might seem. So right now I have this car without the parking brake on, it's in park, and the way this one works is it's a foot pedal. So when you get in the car, you use your left foot, you push it on, and then you release it with this handle. Some cars you push it back again to disengage it. Now the way it's supposed to work is once your car has the parking brake fully engaged, you're not supposed to be able to push the car back and forth. So if I get out with it disengaged, as you can see, disengaged, I can roll the car back and forth and it moves a bit. So if you put the parking brake on fully, it should be locked in place. But as you can see, this one is failing. The car still moves. You can hear it squeaking, so it's engaged a little bit, but the car still totally moves. So this parking brake has failed and it needs readjustment. So even with the parking brake fully engaged, the car still rocks back and forth as if the parking brake isn't on at all. Now, a lot of newer vehicles like this 2019 Ram here have electronic parking brakes. So you pull it and that engages it, and to disengage it, you push it. So right now I have this vehicle parked with the parking brake on, my foot on the brake. If I take the parking brake off, you hear the little motor disengage it, and if I take my foot off the brake, the vehicle should roll just a little bit because the parking brake was holding it correctly. A lot of these vehicles also have an automatic parking feature, so if I put it into park, the brake will automatically engage itself, and you'll see my foot. I'm not going to change the pressure I put on my foot, but the pedal will move a little bit as the motor engages. And you will also see when you put it in a park and the automatic braking comes on, it will notify you with a little thing, and then the parking brake light comes on. Now this vehicle, since it has an electronic parking brake that automatically will adjust itself, right now it's in drive, but the parking brake is on and it's holding itself. This massive Ram, even if I give it some gas, it won't move with the parking brake on. The final type of parking brake is the traditional handbrake. So the way this works is you pull it up, the ratchet mechanism locks in at every little interval, and it holds itself in place just like that. And when you want to remove it, a lot of people just try and push the button, but if I don't lift up on it, the button will not push in. Some cars, it's a little weaker, so it will, but it's hard. But this Lexus will not let me push the button in. So what you have to do, lift up more, then the button goes in easily, and you can lower it effortlessly. And once again, this vehicle has a fully functional parking brake, so with it fully engaged in drive, the vehicle does not move at all. And that's the way it should be. Now, people like to call the parking brake the emergency brake, but here's why you shouldn't do that. If I start driving along and then I decide to just pull up on the handbrake, my back tires just locked up and I lost all control. And if I try to use this brake, my ABS will freak out and lock up all the wheels. So you cannot just freak out and pull this up, because that will have you, especially if you're going fast, you will just spin out and probably hit something. So what I just showed you was the dangerous way to put the handbrake on, which is the freaking out method. But what you should do is, as you're driving along, if you notice your brakes are failing and you need to use your parking brake as an emergency brake, what you want to do is you want to slowly engage it. You hear it click on. I have my foot's not on the brake. If I keep pulling it up, I'm putting more and more pressure, and we've just come to a complete stop using the parking brake. So what's interesting in these modern vehicles with the electric parking brakes is that they don't want you to just push it by accident and it locks on. So you actually have to hold it. So if I want to do that same thing with this, I have to hold it And it comes to kind of an abrupt stop, but it is a little bit smoother than just slamming a manual one. It doesn't actually lock the wheels up. And I think when you're moving, I think it involves all 4 of the brakes, because this truck also has automatic braking. So because it's a smart enough system, I think this one actually uses all of the brakes and not just the parking brake. Although the parking brake motor does engage, especially once you come to a full stop. I heard it after I'd already stopped. So hopefully in that last clip of from the outside of the truck, you could hear once I came to a stop, the little motor, it engaged after I came to a stop. So that means that the parking brake that is used for the rear wheels normally wasn't used in the emergency braking. It actually did use all 4 of the normal service brakes with the smart ABS system, where once it came to a stop, it disengaged those brakes and engaged the locking mechanism on the rear wheels for the normal parking brake. Another thing to note with this brake here is that when I pulled it while I was moving, it actually turned on the rear brake lights. So that tells me that it didn't use the parking brake to come to a stop, because the parking brake is a completely separate system that has nothing to do with the brake lights or the brakes in the front. So it used the the foot brakes to come to a stop. And then once it did stop, it used the parking brake to hold it in place. Every time you go to park your car, you always want to get in the habit of either pulling up your handbrake, pushing it with your foot, or if you have an electrical one, make sure it's automatic, because you can really mess up your car's transmission if you just leave it in park, because your transmission is the only thing that's holding your car from moving back and forth. So if somebody bumps you in a parking lot, they might break your transmission and all of a sudden your car is rolling away. Where if your parking brake was on and your wheels are actually locked at the wheel, that's not going to happen. And also if you're on a hill or in a manual transmission especially, you always want to make sure you're using your parking brake. But even on flat ground, it's always good to just use your parking brake. That way when you get out of the car, your car doesn't rock back and forth, because that's really hard on your car, and sometimes your passengers might get kind of car sick from that. Another misconception about parking brakes is that you don't have to pull them up all the way. You think, oh, one little click, oh, the light's on, that's all I need. But nope, I can still put this car in drive and drive it away totally fine, like it's not even engaged at all. I could put the car in neutral. Oh look, we're rolling down the driveway. So you have to make sure you have it pulled up all the, because the more you pull it, the tighter it gets, and it's really engaged now. Now if I want to try and put it in drive, it takes a lot of effort to get this thing to move. So always make sure you pull it up all the way. You want to hear several clicks, and sometimes when these wear out, they can go all the way up and you hear a bunch of clicks, but it's still loose, just like on the other car I showed you with the foot one. That can happen on these too. So always make sure your parking brake will hold your car in place before you get out of it.